So I'm going to talk to you about a use case we applied. I just, out of curiosity, want to know how many people in this room have actually coded or programmed a use case in blockchain? Oh, wow. How many have actually sold it? Okay, there's work to do. Good. I'm going to talk about the functions of notarization, which is what we did, digital initiatives around it, solution design, how we deployed it, and the future of that topic. So, but I first start with the concept of actually what's a sensible use case for blockchain, right? A lot of stuff doesn't make sense. I'll give you a few examples. Long Blockchain Corp was actually Long Iced Tea. They were selling iced tea and decided, well, we'll just change the name of the company, called it Long Blockchain, and guess what happened to their stock price? It went up by over 200%, just based on a name change. Does it make sense? I don't think so. The F one here is gives a fuck, verbally. It's basically a token where you say, okay, if you think you care about somebody, you send them some tokens. You feel bad, you're depressed, we'll send you some tokens. Let's see what happens. Doesn't care, it's worth nothing. Not sure it's a great use case, right? And the bottom, they create this blockchain actually, where to put some IoT on trees, and you would subscribe, and every time you pass near one of those trees, the tree will consider that you're taking basically, you know, the oxygen of the earth, and they will charge you for that. I'm not sure it's a great use case for blockchain. So over there, a few use cases we worked on, and we think they make sense. So blockchain as a service. A lot of people actually say, I want to work with blockchain without having to know everything around it, be able to create my blockchain, play around with it. So that's something that people actually want to use. Trace chains. Trace chains are chains where basically you can say, okay, I want to trace my food. Where does it actually come from? The fish was fished somewhere, came out of the ocean to that supermarket, and all that stuff. That's something people are using. Trans-record chain, a big one. Reconciliation among multiple actors using the same numbers, right? Another use case is KYC. KYC is know your client, know your counterpart. Tons of data are being basically exchanged on a bilateral level. By putting this on a chain, you can share it multilaterally, also a good use case. And notary chain, which you're going to talk about here. I think anything you do in this field, you think about what's use case. So we looked at notaries, basically, with the government in Luxembourg, and we realized, well, what are notaries actually doing? Well, they're advisors in commercial civil matters, a bit like a lawyer, right? But they actually guarantee binding and trusted authenticity of documents, right? They must examine and certify any information. They must create a register around it, an archive, and then they share it with people. Or it must be shareable, even if they don't share it. Now, you look at blockchain and they say there's some stuff there that actually is inherent to blockchain technology. Immutability, right? You want that thing once it's archived to not being changed. Timestamping, when was it done? Ownership, who owns something, right? Traceability, where does it come from, and transfer. So you look at what a notary does and realize actually a lot of what they're doing is congruent with the technology inherent to blockchain. There's not a thing that added to it. Is notarization historically has been fairly domestic, right? You buy a house and so on, but increasingly actually notarization goes cross-border. It's linked to many things. People don't live in their country of origin. They don't study in their country of origin. They don't marry somebody of their country of origin, right? So we have millions, and these numbers are, by the way, understated just in Europe. So we say 2.5 million properties belong to people living abroad. We know it's much more than that, actually. But that's what's being declared already out there, right? Cross-border notarization, here you got it, right? All those binational weddings, and they're increasing cross-border notarizations. So this is a use case on one side for personal use, but also for businesses. How many businesses are offering, opening subsidiaries abroad? Hugely so. Cross-border notarization. So not only notarization has some stuff in it that's linked to blockchain, but increasingly it's important from a cross-border perspective. So there are many initiatives, and I will not run you through all these. They have been created in Europe around like sharing notarized information, standardizing it, making it better and all that, right? One I want to talk about is e-app. Apostille. Apostille is actually based on a law that was agreed by the International Tribunal in Hague in the 1960s, saying if I get a notarized document from a different country, somebody in my home country can actually certify it's true. The problem is, it's a huge progress, decided a long time ago, but this is actually something that is still manual. Now, e-apostille started in many countries where actually you can now do it electronically. So there are few use cases that are being worked on where the notarization world is clearly saying, well, we want to modernize, we want to become digital. Also because these cross-border aspects, also because they want to be optimizing the cost base, right? So for example, the Belgians have done e-apostilles, meaning from now on you don't need to have somebody that physically takes the notarized document from a different country and says, okay, well, I'll put a stamp on it and say, yeah, this is a true document. Don't forget, if this legal basis does not exist between two countries, it means you need to go back to the home country where it came from to get it certified. Physically impossible in most cases. But now you can have this done electronically. Big progress, right? We're getting there. In France, actually, it's very interesting. Notaries have started to do video notarization. Totally new thing. The first one was done in October 2018, so we're talking something freshly new. France being a relatively big country, between Paris and Lille, you know, whatever, French Riviera in the north, it makes it worthwhile. The interesting fact is they started the first one in October. By now, 20% of notaries in France got that system already. So that we saw there's an inherent demand somewhere by this world to digitalize, to modernize, and become more efficient, right? So how do you go about looking at those use cases? I think that's also important. There's a methodology to make it work. You look basically at the stakeholders, which we did, notaries, legislators, supranationals, tech providers, and all this. Get them in a room or talk to all of them. Try to find out what basically they want. Then you apply user-centrism. Who are the users? Well, primarily the notaries, right? And make sure you integrate their needs and demands in use case. Very important. It's not only about tech, it's about these people. And users are two people. The final user, the client of a notary, he or she is king, and the team of the notary, actually. Those people who do all this stamping world and say, actually, I'd like to do more interesting stuff than that. And you use design thinking, which is very important. I look at what they do, learn from what they do, improve that. So this is a slide I often use, basically. Before going for a blockchain, look at the challenge opportunity, look at the blockchain. Every blockchain has some unique features, the strengths, the weaknesses, and some features that may be missing. And based on that information, you're going to choose the chain you're going to use. So we usually, with some of our prototypes, we use sometimes 7, 8 chains to code them, to see how it works, what's best out there. In this case, we had a challenge. Actually, we were told by the government, use Ethereum. Okay, that's an interesting starting point, but this is the way I would want to go about it in general. Now, then we listed basically the key list of requirements we had. They're fairly classic, would say. But also, and that's really important, a list of benefits. In our case, with that Luxembourg government blockchain technology applied, we knew that the costs were going to be divided by 2. That's a tangible benefit. I can come back to people and say, yeah, that's worthwhile, right? And then you apply design thinking in general. So basically, use a design, you apply it on a small scale, you see what the client does with it, you learn, you ideate again, and so on. So that means in concrete terms, if you work on something like this, try to show your constituents, the users, something that's moving and turning after a few weeks, not after a few months. Right? This is a new world blockchain. People need to believe in it. You have people at a certain level who are technical and say, yeah, I believe in it, I'm ready to do this. But they need to show the other people in the organization that something works. So the key features is that users are registered and given roles. We'll come to that. Then authorized users can upload crypto hashes of documents, so you don't upload the documents, but the hashes, obviously. We'll come to that in more detail. And then the authorized users, the others, may verify that the document actually is the original document, right? Simple as that, actually. So in terms of architecture, I'll run through this quickly. We can talk about it more bilaterally if you're interested. So we created a web app, Java with little onDotic, API interface, actually fairly important because blockchain technology doesn't solve all, and some weaknesses of Ethereum have been solved through the API, right? It could do certain things that Ethereum doesn't do. Obviously, smart contracts, we use Solidity, that makes sense, the most advanced one for Ethereum out there anyway, to have a notarization manager, notarization address, basically, the logging, very important, so we would log any action on the chain, the roles, and we'll get to the object, right? And obviously, Ethereum blockchain. It has pros and cons, as we know. The gas usage may be a bit of a challenge. Just the interesting input is that after having done a first version, we did a second version in which we devised a system where actually it's a permission blockchain. So it's not a classic Ethereum environment, number one. Number two, where we want to avoid that everybody on chain has to become a miner. And therefore, you could create a system which recalibrates the gas as things go on. If you collect too much gas, the system will just give it to others so they can continue. Because you don't do this to earn anything, but you need gas to make the smart contracts work, right? We build this on infra-chain. Now, this is a Luxembourg-based blockchain infrastructure that is built to be industry resilient. You see, when you build industry-scale blockchain solutions, the nodes you use are going to be really important if you want to scale them, i.e. they're going to be secure and always working. So enough nodes to kick in if the other nodes basically don't do it anymore. So basically, it's very simple. Somebody registers, so you start as unassigned, and then the admin can assign a role to you, right? A notary that can basically notarize objects, a verifier can verify it, and some can do both. Then basically, we start with the object. So there's an active object where hashes and metadata can be used, and there are locked objects, which are, once the metadata has been added to the object, and you say that's it, nothing more is added, it's locked, and you have retired objects for whatever reason, right? Then basically, if you do a verification, well, what's important is you decide how many hashes you want to use. For techies, you know why you do this. The reason is the hash is always shorter than the original, so there's a remote possibility you may have the same hash appearing, so you use 2 or 3 different hashes, or you make that your choice, right? You add related record, you add metadata, and the timestamps added automatically. Oops, sorry, jumped there. And basically, when you verify it, you take an object, you hash it. If the same hashes are found, then you get the verification saying, yep, that's the original object, right? Now, our vision of the future, we built this from one country. It's the first country in Europe that has actually a blockchainized version of notarization. I said the impact is it goes faster, it's cheaper, so it's tangible. We don't believe everybody should use the same technology. Well, we build it with a mindset saying different countries are going to use different technology, but we want to make it interoperable. We foresee people using Hyperledger for this, for example, pretty sure, or even Stellar. So you build a manner that's open. We did a kickoff in Luxembourg in February, inviting 7 governments, the European Commission, saying, okay, if you want to work with us and build it for your country, we'll do it together, we'll help you, but it doesn't mean you have to use our technology. But just use the channels and tubes so we can communicate with you and make it cross-border. And our vision is also basically that in the future we're going to have a secured version of notarized blockchains that are going to allow us to share documents cross-border and verify actually that they are what they are, right? They're going to be fast and cheap. And our message to you is just, let's get started. If you want to build one for Ukraine, talk to us. We want to do this together. I said we're talking to 7 governments already. And we think clearly that's where notarization is going. Not the most sexiest use case. It's not the one where you say, well, you can make, ST on whatever. But actually, this one works. Thank you.